don't trust AI. So I say that, and of course I have programs and a book and all that stuff on AI, which by the way you can check out. But this isn't about that. This is about Coinbase came out with a post on X saying that they just introduced Coinbase Advisor. So it is one of the first SEC regulated AI-powered investment advisors in the world. High quality advice specific to you is now one chat away. Real-time portfolio analysis, automated tax loss harvesting, and more. Rolling out to Coinbase One members. Sounds great, sounds cool, sounds futuristic, sounds awesome. Coinbase, if you didn't know, has really leaned into the agentic economy with crypto. So, it's cool, right? This stuff is cool and this stuff is coming. But the problem is, and like I said in the opener, is you can't trust these things because, again, I'll read the line. One of the first SEC registered AI powered investment advisors in the world. Now, even though AI has access to a ton of information, more information than probably your own financial advisor. By the way, I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice or anything like that. AI works in funny ways. It's very, very smart, but also very, very stupid. It makes it makes big mistakes sometimes, right? Or it just has an idea that speaks to you with confidence, yet it's completely wrong, or it's just not applicable to your situation. And so while this is cool, and we'll see more and more of this come out from companies, especially as the AI models grow, as they get more powerful and they get more integrated, the thing is you can't fully trust this. You can't rely 100% on this. And I make this warning because there's people out there that's gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm just gonna be asking my agent for all the tips and tricks and advice. And it may work out for you, right? I'm not being a doomer about this, but it may work out. I got a little hair poking out there, but it may be all good, but you don't know it. So I read this book. It was called Phenomena by Ann Jacobson. She's wrote a bunch of books on like spycraft and espionage and things like that. Some cool stuff, right? Fascinating author and fascinating topics if you're into that type of stuff. And so she wrote this book. This book was about kind of the founding of the CIA, and it was also about the how they were investing in ESP and psychic phenomena, because they had heard it exists, and they had heard that the Russians, right, our foreign rivals or adversaries, were also leaning into this stuff. And so they put money and they invested, at the time it was millions of dollars, which was a lot then, into studying phenomena. And basically the conclusion of the book was that, it exists. And they couldn't figure out how some people were able to get the information that they did, basically through ESP, like remote viewing and things like that, like things where they would have, a military base set up on another part of the world, and they'd have the person isolated in an environment over here in another geographic location, and they'd ask the person to come up with specific information about the place that they've never seen before, right? And they kind of tried to control the experiment, and they found that the people were able to actually give them insights and information about this place they had never interacted with before, right? So, which made it nearly impossible that the person had went there physically or had someone giving them tips and tricks and insights, right? They basically were able to rule that out. And they, did the classic card game where, they had people across the table and they're holding up a card and was like, hey, what's on this side of the card? They did that type of stuff. And they measured the accuracy of the people that were claiming they had ESP. And the people obviously fell within a range of accuracy, right? Some more than others. Some people, of course, there's people out in the public that are claiming they had these psychic powers or whatnot. And some were more skilled than others. Now, this is what they released in the book, right? And so if they still have documents and stuff that are redacted, that they haven't released, then there might be people that have super phenomena powers. But there's a spectrum. And basically the conclusion was that yes, this exists. Yes, these people can get insights into the world around them that kind of defied logic and science, right? In a way that's like, are they doing it? But they weren't always 100% accurate. So even the best people with ESP, they couldn't depend on them completely for the U.S. espionage activities, because there was a large margin of error in their assessments, right? And they try to use these people to find missing people, to find, with hostage situations, to find and identify if foreign countries were planting, spy devices, right? Cameras, sensors, that kind of stuff. So they try to use to find that stuff that they wouldn't necessarily be able to find on their own. But they basically found out that, hey, yes, this exists, but not all these people, you can't fully trust it, even if the people fully believe what they're saying, because that often happened, that the person was like very, very confident in the thing that they were communicating, as, they were able to, the information they were able to glean from the ether or whatever it was. And they found that, yes, sometimes it was right, but often it wasn't, or there was slight errors that made the intelligence that they gathered, right? Because they gather the intelligence so that they can make a confident, accurate, and decisive decision. Very, very important in that world, very, very important with military technology, all that kind of stuff. Like, the more intel you have, the more confident you can be with your strategy, okay? And so they basically said, okay, we can use these people, but we also need to use like traditional, normal methods that like we can back up with science and we can 100% prove and verify and validate, right? Like sending in an undercover agent, flying a helicopter or a drone, right? That type of stuff, taking satellite imagery. So that was the type of stuff they're like, yeah, that stuff works and we can verify and validate it, so we can lean into that data better because we know that we have solid reasoning as to how we got it, if it's there, and all of that, right? And we know the limitations of our machines there. So I say that because it's a fascinating story, but also it's applicable to AI and agents. So when they come out with these advisors, it's cool, right? And they're doing something that's almost like ESP, almost like phenomena, right? Almost like that. But you as the user, you don't really know how and where they're getting the information. Okay, you don't know what they're basing their recommendations on. And that's a big thing with AI, is that it works really well for specifically narrow, repeatable tasks, general information, and when you're able to provide enough context around what you want it to do, and the context that you've given it, that it's using that to come up with the outputs that you want. And for most people, and this is a learning curve for everyone, most people underestimate how much context they are using in their daily lives, in their work, to get the outputs that you're getting just normally. And so because they underestimate that, they don't give AI enough context, and then it makes decisions that are inaccurate. And this is especially clear when you are using AI for a domain where you are an expert, where you really know a lot about it. When you're using AI in a domain that you don't know much about, it sounds like a genius. It seems like a genius because you don't know what you don't know. But when you know everything about your niche and industry and you start using AI, you catch so many errors and so many confident errors from the AI. So it doesn't mean it's bad, it's just you need to know the limitations of the tool. And by the way, if you want to learn more about AI and its pros, its cons, its limitations, and its capabilities, join the arsenal below, right? Click the link, join that. That's my monthly membership where I share lessons on what is AI, how to use it, how to incorporate it in your work, and how to make money with it, right? How to actually use it to get results in real life, not just create pretty dashboards that only you see and no one buys, right? Because that's no fun. It's fun for a minute, and then you're like, I got to pay the bills. So join the arsenal below there. So I say all this with these agents as they come out, is that they are like these people with ESP, that it's like, cool, they do this cool fancy thing, but we're not really sure how accurate it is all the time, right? There's differences in inconsistency, and we don't really know how or where it's getting the information. So what's going to happen to you, right? I think these things are cool to lean into, but don't lean into them fully, right? Use them as another resource, right? As another source of information, but don't depend 100% on them. You have to cross-reference the advice and the insights that they give you. You have to go do your own research, especially with crypto or anything financial. And also, you got to be careful plugging these things into your financial data, right? There's things there, but that's a whole other conversation. But you have to make sure that you're checking with multiple sources, and you have to make sure that if it tells you advice on something, that you try to understand why and where that advice is coming from, so you can validate that, so you can actually have confidence in that. And so if you don't do this, the issue is that you run the risk of being misled by the AI, and it doesn't know, right? And who are you going to push back on? Right? You're like, okay, I'm going to go hire another AI advisor if you don't do a good job. Like, AI doesn't care, right? Versus a real financial advisor, they actually have an incentive to care, because if you hire a new one, then they don't get your money, they don't have a livelihood, and that's not good for them. And so they have an incentive to do a good job. The AI, a little bit less so, okay? Now, obviously Coinbase wants their agent to do well and all of that, but it's not like a human who's like, hey, I need to actually do a good job for my clients, because if I do, then I get money, I can feed myself and my family. AI doesn't have a family to feed. So keep that in mind with these things. I think what's going to happen, looking forward to this, is that you're going to have these agents come out, and they're going to come out for all different areas of life, right? You're going to have fitness agents, you're going to have training agents, you're going to have teaching agents, you're going to have financial agents, tax agents, all this kind of stuff. And what's going to happen is they're going to have a public trust score, right? A capability and competence score. And you'll have companies, private companies or whatever, behind these systems that support it and try to make them as good as possible. And you'll have competing companies. So for example, you'll have financial agents and you'll have competing companies trying to make their financial agent the best. And they'll have to publicly share how the agents are doing. So you can look at the agent and there's a public trust score behind the agent, and you can see this agent with these types of portfolios made these types of calls at this type of time, right? Here's the reasoning and logic, and here's the success rate of this agent. That's going to start happening in the future. So what it does for you as a consumer, one, it allows these agents to compete against each other, which is probably a good thing, right? To be better and better at the outcome. And then you can select the different types of advising agents or whatever strategy agents that you're using to better align with who you are, where you're going, what you want, what results, and all that kind of stuff. And you can have more confidence because it's not just giving you advice behind closed doors. Of course, that should be privatized, but you have a public score where it's being judged and evaluated by other agents and other people by the results. And so you have more confidence and say, hey, maybe it's after 3 years for this Coinbase agent. Here's all of the results. Here's all the inputs. Here's the accuracy and assessment. And there's a benchmark study that can be verified, validated, and proven that users who went and used the Coinbase AI agent, I'm not saying this is happening right now, this is hypothetical in the future, but users who use this agent on average got a X% higher return than users that didn't, okay? And it's verified and validated across multiple market conditions, across, thousands or millions of users or whatever it is, right? You're gonna start seeing that in the future with these things. But for now, they're cool, they're novel, right? They sound sexy, but don't fully trust them. Don't fully trust them. Understand the limitations. And as always with crypto, with anything like this, it's best to, understand it, right? Get your hands dirty, play around with it, but don't take it 100% seriously, right? You always go and cross-reference your data and cross-reference the outputs and do your own research so that you can be more confident in the decisions that you're making because you've checked them. It's not just you've outsourced it, right? That's one of the biggest ways to get wrecked in crypto is outsourcing your decision-making process to others and not understanding actually what that is yourself. So that is it for this one. If you want to join the arsenal, click the link below and subscribe and follow along for more topics like this, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.